My name is Lisa Brown, and I am 22 years old. The news of my husband's first son arrived just as we were sharing the ceremonial wine in our bridal chamber on our wedding night. The maid burst in with poorly concealed excitement, her face flushed with joy. "Master, congratulations! Amy has given birth to a son for you." The words fell like stones into still water, and the entire room fell silent. I released my grip on the wine cup, letting it tumble and splash its contents across the floor. Mike Anderson stormed into the birthing chamber in a rage, lifting the child as if to dash it against the ground. "Wretched servant, how dare a mere concubine conceive and bear a child without the main wife's permission?" My mother-in-law, Susan Anderson, wept as she begged me, "After all, this is your husband's blood. Since the child has already been born, won't you grant him some recognition?" In that moment, all eyes turned to me, seemingly waiting for me to relent and acknowledge the child's legitimacy. I smiled calmly and said, "Mother Anderson speaks wisely. He was born on his father's wedding day and is indeed the Anderson family's eldest grandson. In my opinion, only the status of legitimate heir would befit him." The moonlight was brilliant, stars twinkling like scattered diamonds. Within the Anderson manor, lanterns and red silk banners cast their warm glow. This should have been the most joyful day for Mike Anderson, head of the Anderson household, and myself, yet it was interrupted by a servant who burst into our bridal chamber. "Master, wonderful news! Miss Amy has given birth to a young master." The servant was tremendously excited, seemingly oblivious to the strange silence that had descended upon the bridal chamber. Mike Anderson instinctively glanced toward me. I loosened my grip on the wine goblet, the red cord-bound cup tumbling from my hand. Half the wine spilled out as the goblet spun near the floor before coming to rest. "How dare you! A mere servant's son! How can he be called young master?" Mike Anderson roared. The servant immediately dropped to her knees, apologizing profusely. He had fresh wine poured and handed to me, but I did not take it, my expression remaining distant. "On your wedding night, to receive such joyful news of a precious son, won't you go and see him?" I asked. Mike Anderson's face paled as he offered hurried explanations. When our eyes met and he saw my unnaturally calm gaze, he paused and assured me, "My lady, please rest easy. I will certainly provide you with a proper explanation." The unfinished wine was returned to its red lacquer tray. Mike Anderson rose hastily and departed, taking with him the crisp scent of pine that had filled the room. My expression remained cold as I glanced at the servant still kneeling before me. "Lead the way." Her audacity in bursting into the bridal chamber with such joyful news on this particular day clearly indicated someone had instructed her to do so. Without my presence, today's drama surely could not continue. The servant looked momentarily startled when our eyes met, then quickly lowered her head, softly murmuring yes, before turning and walking ahead with a bowed posture. We traveled a long, winding path before arriving at a remote, small courtyard. Though isolated, it was crowded with people. As soon as we entered, I could hear Mike Anderson arguing loudly with someone. Drawing closer, I saw him holding the child aloft, making as if to hurl it to the ground. Servants and wet nurses surrounded him in several circles, pleading desperately, terrified he might suddenly release his grip before they could catch the infant. I stood outside observing without speaking until someone called out, "The main wife has arrived! Main wife, save us!" Mike Anderson's hand trembled as he held the child, his eyes closing briefly before he spoke with bitter reproach. "Vile servant! How dare you, a mere concubine, conceive and bear a child without the main wife's permission? Today I shall put an end to this bastard child to restore proper order to this household." "Stop! If you dare harm my grandson, I shall dash my head against the wall." The elderly Susan Anderson's body shook with rage as she positioned herself before him. "Now that the household has a main wife, such matters should be decided by her. The woman who had seemed ready to faint with anger moved like the wind to the doorway, grasping my arm and quickly positioning me before Mike Anderson. After all, this is your husband's blood. Since the child has already been born, won't you grant him some recognition? Her words carried an implicit threat. Mike Anderson hesitated momentarily, his expression showing reluctance. He was waiting for me to speak. I observed this theatrical performance with cold eyes and mocked with detachment. The elderly lady speaks correctly. He was born on his father's wedding day and is the Anderson family's eldest grandson. In my view, only the status of legitimate heir would befit him. When I spoke the words, legitimate eldest grandson, Mike Anderson's face went white. The elderly lady sighed with relief. The servant kneeling at Mike Anderson's feet frantically kowtowed to me. "Thank you, main wife. Amy will serve like an ox and horse from now on. Servants, pack my dowry. We return home." "My lady, please let me explain." As I turned to leave, someone grasped my arm. "Explain what?" I turned back with a derisive laugh. "Will you explain that the child isn't yours? Or that you, as master of the house, were somehow deceived along with the elderly lady by servants for 10 months? Or perhaps that today's performance wasn't calculated to force me into acknowledging this child?" The more I spoke, the colder my expression became. This matter was, plainly speaking, the Anderson family engaging in fraudulent marriage arrangements, deliberately humiliating the Brown family. Mike Anderson appeared to be protective while actually showing weakness at every turn, clearly hoping I would swallow this bitter pill in silence. He knew well that I had never been favored. My father and stepmother would never stand up for me, but they seemed to forget that I was, above all, a merchant, and merchants never accept losses lying down. The pressure on my arm loosened slightly, allowing me to pull away forcefully. Such blatant calculation could not have proceeded without Mike Anderson's knowledge. Even if he truly had been deceived by his own mother, what concern was that of mine? Regardless, the concubine was his, and the child was his. "Stop. If you dare leave, I'll have my son divorce you. By tomorrow morning, all of Golden River will know that the Brown family daughter was divorced on her wedding night. Not only will you suffer, but your sisters will also be implicated." I turned back to face the elderly lady's triumphant smile, as if my pause indicated she had successfully manipulated me. She assumed a stern expression, her voice becoming more serious. "Let me tell you the truth. Amy isn't just any concubine. She's my niece from my maternal family, waiting only for you to enter our household." "Mother!" Mike Anderson cut her off sharply, frantically trying to explain to me. "I won't make her my concubine. If you're unwilling, I can remain without concubines for life, having only you. Given what has occurred, I only ask for another chance." To demonstrate his sincerity, he raised 3 fingers in a solemn oath. I narrowed my eyes, my gaze growing icier. "And if I refuse, will you do as your mother suggests?" At this moment, I wanted to test how much genuine feeling he held for me. He hesitated momentarily. I smiled. "Mike Anderson, you still don't understand me well enough." Perhaps once I had felt a fleeting attraction to this man. Now I was paying the price for my former foolishness. But who was I? The most successful businesswoman in Golden River. The one thing I feared least was paying such prices. When I returned home with my grand dowry procession, the Brown family gate was tightly closed. My wet nurse knocked for a considerable time, but no one came to answer. She couldn't help but spit and curse. A bunch of useless creatures who, seeing the young miss married off, have grown lazy and forgotten their duties. They can't even tend the gate properly. After her outburst, tears gathered in her eyes. My mind was clear about the situation. Over these years, following my uncle Steve Miller, I had built a business empire spanning all of Golden River. My stepmother, Karen Taylor, had always been displeased, blaming me for bringing shame to the family by showing my face in public, and resenting that I hadn't brought my earnings home for her benefit. This time, taking advantage of my grandmother Carol Miller's serious illness, she had attempted to manipulate my marriage, wanting to marry me off as a second wife to her nephew. Unexpectedly, through a twist of fate, I had married the good husband she had chosen for her own daughter. Naturally, she could no longer tolerate me. I immediately ordered the procession to turn around to West Street. Knowing well that I had no place in my family home, I had long ago purchased properties on West Street for myself. Not just one, but several. A home is where one has a house, a place of security that belongs to oneself. However, the next morning, just as Susan Anderson had predicted, rumors spread throughout Golden River about how the Brown family daughter had, on her wedding day, caused her mother-in-law to faint with rage and been immediately expelled from the Anderson household. The child was never mentioned in these stories. The Brown family also publicly announced the unfilial daughter Lisa Brown has no further connection to the Brown family. All the noble ladies and women of the city regarded me with shame. My dozen or so shops all suffered consequences. Early in the morning, reports continuously arrived. The pastry shop was ransacked by troublemakers. Losses exceed 100 taels. Several groups of ladies came to the store today, claiming our golden hairpins and jade ornaments were defective and demanding refunds. The amounts are substantial. The cosmetics shop faced similar problems. Some women with unfamiliar faces immediately claimed our products were faulty and threatened to demand compensation. Everyone was in a state of panic. Not only were there returns and complaints, but our regular customers, having heard the rumors, had all turned to other establishments. Who would dare buy anything from a shop owned by someone of poor character, unfilial, and unrighteous? The situation developed so rapidly that clearly someone was orchestrating the trouble. As I racked my brains for solutions, Mike Anderson arrived. He mentioned neither the child nor Amy. Sweat beaded his forehead as he spoke breathlessly. "Do you remember why you agreed to marry me? Please continue to use me as you intended. I'm willing." I frowned and brushed past him. "Mike Anderson, do you know how much money I've lost today because of your family affairs?" If Mike Anderson hadn't spoken, I might have forgotten. Recently, when my grandmother suddenly fell gravely ill and the physician declared her time was near, she was concerned only about my welfare. My stepmother seized this opportunity to arrange a marriage between me and her widowed nephew. My father, long displeased with my public business activities, actually agreed to her scheme. To avoid their manipulation and prevent harm to my ailing grandmother, upon learning of their plans, I rushed back from my grandmother's house. In desperation, I had impulsively sought out Mike Anderson. "Mike Anderson, marry me." Our grandfathers had been old friends. After his father's death, my family had provided considerable assistance. Among the few men I knew, he was the only one I considered suitable as a marriage partner. He had blushed then, stammering before finally managing a yes. My anxious heart finally settled as I explained my situation. In business terms, since this is a transaction, whatever you want, as long as I can provide it, is negotiable. Since we would be a marriage of convenience, it was better to discuss only money. That was more straightforward. Just as I finished asking, the flush quickly faded from his face, and the joy in his eyes turned to bewilderment. Then he stepped forward several paces, his eyes holding emotions I couldn't decipher, and grasped my hands. "If we speak of transactions requiring equal exchange, if I offer my sincere heart in marriage, Miss Brown, would you be willing to give yours in return?" Had it been anyone else, I would certainly have mocked them. Facing Mike Anderson, I couldn't bring myself to laugh. His attempt at composure while taking the matter seriously, combined with his unconsciously tightening grip, left me momentarily dazed. For years I had secretly supported his education. Beyond our family's friendship, I genuinely thought well of him as a person. His scholarship was admirable, his character decent, his appearance pleasing. As a husband, he should be acceptable as well. Perhaps I had run too hastily when coming to see him, disrupting my breathing. I could hear my heart beating like a drum. For the first time in 20 years, I felt my heart flutter. As if bewitched, I fell into his sincere gaze. I'm willing to try. Not for my grandmother, not to counter my stepmother's schemes. In that moment, I genuinely wanted to try. What would it feel like to choose someone to depend upon? Unfortunately, that moment of attraction came quickly and departed just as fast. I have a solution! I can help you! As I impatiently summoned guards to escort him away, Mike Anderson called out urgently. Seeing this, the guards paused and looked to me. Mike Anderson seized the opportunity to break free and rush before me. Your reputation has suffered, along with the Brown family's attitude towards you, all because of our marriage. If you don't mind, I'm willing to proceed as you originally suggested. We could be a married couple in name only. Once your business improves and your grandmother lives out her remaining years peacefully, if you wish to leave, we can divorce at any time. Seeing my silence, he quickly added, or I could write the divorce papers now and give them to you so you can leave whenever you choose. What do you think? Agreed. This time I answered quickly. Mike Anderson hadn't expected such prompt agreement and showed surprise and delight. He immediately began writing the divorce papers in the courtyard. With flowing brushstrokes, an elegantly worded divorce document was completed. I glanced at it, full of affection, expressing reluctance and regret. But once a heart grows cold, no amount of warming can restore it. I coldly handed the divorce papers to Kate, my wet nurse who stood behind me. She hesitated, opening her mouth to object, but I silenced her with a look. I accept the divorce papers. Our marital bond is now ended. You may go. What? I had no desire to acknowledge his disbelief. I had the servants escort him out. Then I gave stern instructions to the managers behind me. Anyone causing trouble or looting will be sent to the authorities and prosecuted fully. For jewelry returns, items purchased within 3 days may be returned. Beyond 3 days, if confirmed as purchased from our store, we'll accept them at depreciated value. For the cosmetic shop incidents, bring a physician from the medicine hall. If our cosmetics truly caused reactions, we'll cover medical and treatment costs completely. For those deliberately causing trouble, send them to the authorities for extortion charges unless they can provide evidence. We'll prosecute to the full extent. Additionally, effective immediately, all shops will reduce prices by 10%, citing celebration of the Anderson family's new legitimate heir. Also hire some storytellers to spread word about my dear stepmother's methods. People don't know the truth. They simply enjoy spectacle and casting stones from moral high ground. Rather than futile explanations, better to let them see everything at once. It would also serve as a warning to others. Such rapid developments required instigators. Fortunately, the money I'd spent over the years building relationships with various government offices wasn't wasted. After giving instructions, I was about to write to my uncle when something struck me as wrong. Though Susan Anderson was a scholar's mother, she came from farming stock and had married into the Anderson family when they were already declining. Even with her so-called niece, she hardly had enough influence to create such havoc. The Brown family's swift, harsh abandonment also seemed too calculated. With this realization, I doubled the payment to the storytellers. Taking the money, the storytellers enthusiastically told their tales. Each incident, each detail stirred righteous indignation in listeners. After cursing stepmother Karen Taylor, they cursed Susan Anderson. After cursing Amy, they cursed Mike Anderson. Finally, they cursed me as well. I say this gentleman's words must have been bought with money. Playing the victim after benefiting, she's just a merchant's daughter. If the Anderson family hadn't encountered this situation, how could they have possibly married her? Getting a good deal and still complaining, probably making a fuss to better control her husband later. Businesswomen have calculating minds. If I were the Anderson family, I'd ignore her for a month or two. Would she really dare divorce? Everyone said I had married Mike Anderson with deliberate social climbing in mind. They called me a lowly merchant's daughter while he was a distinguished scholar. No one seemed to remember that I too had once been an official's daughter. After grandfather's death, when father didn't pursue a governmental career, the Brown family became commoners. Even so, through my own efforts, I had maintained the Brown family's wealth for many years. My clothing and lifestyle equaled what we'd had in grandfather's time. Mike Anderson, meanwhile, had relied on the Brown family and my support to achieve his current status. We each lived by our own abilities. I had never demanded repayment or used this to coerce him into marriage. How could this be called deserving such treatment? Kate, my wet nurse, secretly wept upon hearing these words. When your mother entrusted you to me, it's all this old servant's fault for failing to protect you properly, allowing you to suffer such grievances. How can you say such things, Kate? In my youth, if you hadn't repeatedly risked your life to protect me, I would have been tormented beyond recognition long ago. How could I have achieved what I have today? I was genuinely grateful to her. She had been mother's dowry maid, and could have returned to my grandmother's household after mother's death to marry well. But for my sake, she had remained in the Brown household for over 10 years without marrying. But seeing you suffer such injustice while I'm powerless to help, she wept even harder. I took my handkerchief and gently wiped away her tears, but this only made her cry more sorrowfully. My young mistress is so capable, so much more capable than that Mike Anderson, yet how can they slander and malign you so? Dear Kate, I held her gently. Let them slander as they will. As long as you know I'm stronger than all of them, that's enough. I had long understood that people only believe what they choose to believe. When one seeks to condemn, any excuse will suffice. So that day I issued new instructions to Lisa's record managers. Each shop should have a bookkeeper present. If anyone deliberately causes trouble or damage, immediately record it for compensation. Show no mercy. Internally, Lisa's record will continue striving for excellence in food and goods, pursuing the highest quality. Externally, all Lisa's record sales are final once payment is made. No returns. Rather than temporary notoriety, I cared more about Lisa's records business. While the public raged, Lisa's record was like being roasted over fire. I was busy beyond measure. After dealing with a group of suppliers trying to take advantage by raising prices, I was hurrying out when Karen Taylor and Father arrived together, both wearing grim expressions. Father snorted coldly, unwilling to speak much, and seated himself in the place of honor. He had always considered me rebellious, unable to control me, yet looking down upon me. Karen Taylor clutched her handkerchief, speaking with bitter sarcasm. Initially, when you refused to marry my honest nephew, I thought your aspirations were higher than heaven, that you'd found a superior match. But you were rejected by your husband's family on your wedding day, bringing shame to our clan and affecting your sisters. Your father and I have discussed this. In future, you shouldn't involve yourself in Lisa's record matters. Properly apologize to the Anderson family, then dutifully serve your husband and educate children. In time, people will naturally forget these troublesome events. I couldn't suppress a cold laugh. Her calculating intentions were completely transparent. Absurdly, Father maintained his air of righteousness. I settled back into my seat, sipping tea lightly while regarding her with icy disdain. Why are you crying? Isn't there still much treasure left at home? Tell my father that once my Lisa's record recovers, I'll return these items doubled. Then the Anderson family will surely regard our Brown family more favorably. Upon hearing this, Karen Taylor's eyes rolled back and she collapsed amid the servants' alarmed cries. Beyond the Brown family, I visited each of the clan elders who had long benefited from my generosity while maintaining superior attitudes. Without lifting my eyes, Lisa's record has merely encountered a small obstacle. Having engaged in commerce for many years, I've earned considerable money. Now I'm merely suffering small losses. If the elders could assist slightly, this will quickly pass. These people had always taken without giving. I would no longer indulge them. If lending money isn't possible, then please return the money, treasures, and precious items you've taken from me over the years. Besides sturdy women and guards, I had deliberately brought a team of gong and drum players, determined to make a complete break. Over the years, I had provided them with fine food, drink, and treasures, hoping for more autonomy in marriage matters. Though marriages required parental approval and matchmaker arrangements, when clan elders spoke, even father had to listen. But what was the result? When Karen Taylor schemed maliciously, these people didn't even protest. They assumed that as long as Lisa's record bore the Brown name, they could exploit it endlessly. Previously, I hadn't had opportunity to deal with them. Today, I would tear away their pretenses entirely. The Lisa's record owner has gone mad. Lisa's record is failing. More than failing, I heard she owes considerable debts. Even selling the entire Brown and Anderson families wouldn't fill such a hole. Common people always believed rumors. After my maneuvering, they were convinced Lisa's record was unsustainable. Some actually began sympathizing with me. After all, for a woman to build such business success shows real capability. Indeed, a woman supporting an entire large family, I've never heard of such a thing. Unfortunately, she's still just a woman. Such a woman creating such enormous trouble will probably only be abandoned by her family. Otherwise, why would the Anderson family be so clever to expel such a new bride early? Rumors grew more elaborate. Though the Brown family had claimed to sever ties with me, they hadn't removed my name from the genealogy or written formal disownment papers, so the relationship wasn't truly severed. I had to give them a push. Having lost face and money, the clan elders probably wanted to tear out the genealogy page bearing my name. Now, everything was prepared. I waited patiently. However, instead of the Brown family, Mike Anderson came. Returning from business matters late that evening, I found him pacing anxiously by my residence gate, uncertain how long he'd been there, covered with frost. Seeing me alight from my palanquin, he rushed forward to intercept me. "Is Lisa's record in trouble? Do you need my help?" Immediately realizing his poor choice of words, he hastily explained, "No, not help. We're husband and wife as one. Your affairs are my affairs. Pack your things today and return with me. I'll personally speak to Mother. I can handle Lisa's record's subsequent matters." He waited carefully for my response. Despite my exhaustion, I couldn't help studying him for a long moment. Having not seen him for several days, the concern in his eyes seemed genuine. Perhaps his feelings were sincere, but such sincerity, when faced with his mother, would be halved at minimum. Add his newborn son, and it would be halved again. Half of half, even without grievances would arise. I feigned confusion, then sudden understanding. "I've been so busy recently. This afternoon, I sent someone to submit our divorce papers to the authorities. Now we are truly no longer husband and wife. Once divorce papers are submitted to authorities, there's truly no possibility of reconciliation. But I had also deceived him. I had deliberately kept the divorce papers to restrain the Brown family. Previously, I couldn't spare the time. Though the Brown family claimed publicly to sever relations, secretly, they still wanted to drain me and Lisa's record. Not only did Karen Taylor covet my business, even my hypocritically noble father wanted to seize Lisa's record when I left the Anderson family. But he was too greedy, wanting both Lisa's record and to maintain connections with the Anderson family through me. Mike Anderson's bright official future was exactly what the Brown family needed. He assumed that as long as I remained in the Brown genealogy, I could never escape them. Unfortunately, his indecision cost him the initiative. Even if we're not married, I can still help. No, consider it repayment. Have you forgotten how you helped me without expecting return? Mike Anderson forced a strained smile, holding a small wooden box toward me. I know you never loved me. Your marriage to me was out of necessity, but I truly care for you. This box contains all the Anderson family's property deeds, fields, and shops. Take them for now. If it's insufficient, I'll find other ways. The autumn night was bitterly cold. I noticed frost gathering on his eyebrows. My heart suddenly felt clear. I declined his offer while subtly reminding him, I heard the household will celebrate the eldest son's 1-month birthday. Organizing such festivities requires money. You should keep this. My mother doesn't understand such things. This money, you should... I don't lack money. Truly. I pressed the box back into his arms and bowed slightly. Regardless of previous events, when even my closest relatives wouldn't extend help, he had offered assistance in my time of need. I accepted his kindness and owed him thanks. From this point forward, we were even. When Father learned of my divorce from Mike Anderson, he could no longer remain passive. Worthless creature. From childhood, I could see you were born to curse our Brown family. This was the first time since I'd established Lisa's record that he showed undisguised malice toward me. His twisted expression merged with childhood memories of his face during beatings and scoldings. But this time, I no longer felt fear. Facing his pressure, I retorted, plant melons, harvest melons. Plant beans, harvest beans. If I'm bad seed, what does that make you? Previously, he had resisted clan pressure and avoided punishing me because he was waiting for Mike Anderson's attitude. Once the news broke, he immediately summoned the clan elders. A room full of relatives who had fed off my blood and enjoyed luxury for years now glared at me furiously, demanding the ancestral hall be open to expel me from the genealogy. Father wrote disownment papers on the spot, had them copied and posted at the busiest market entrance. The unfilial daughter Lisa Brown, who defies her elders, lacks feminine virtue, and displays wild arrogance, from today is expelled from the Brown family, stripped of surname. Henceforth, whether in life or death, she has no connection to the Brown family. The thick document apparently contained 3 full pages denouncing me, as if years of suppressed anger had been vented onto those sheets. I glanced once to confirm it was indeed a disownment paper, then had Kate collect it. Kate wanted to tear the papers to shreds, but I dissuaded her. We mustn't tear this. If someday someone tries to renege shamefully, we'll have evidence. Her expression shifted, immediately becoming joyful. Miss speaks correctly. I'll store it safely, very safely. Now everyone assumed I was completely finished, waiting to witness my downfall. They wanted to see how a woman abandoned by both her husbands and birth families would plummet from the heights, how this remarkable woman of Golden River would be utterly destroyed. But the next day, Lisa's record continued operating normally. Moreover, overnight, 20 new Lisa's record shops opened in neighboring Yuzhou. I had deliberately stalled Father to prepare these arrangements. After seemingly insurmountable obstacles, light appeared. Now completely freed from the Brown family, I could finally expand Lisa's record boldly. Our proprietor announces, to celebrate new store openings, all Lisa's record shops offer 15% discounts for 5 days only. After 5 days, all locations return to regular prices. With the clerk's announcements, everyone rushed to make purchases. No one had time for gossip about the premature disownment papers or the Anderson family's misjudgment. Fortunately, Lisa's record had prepared thoroughly, stocking ample goods and earning tremendous profits. 5 days later, everything returned to normal. Though prices resumed, Lisa's record's quality and reputation kept business thriving. After handling everything, I rushed to Uncle's house, eager to learn about grandmother's condition. Upon meeting, I received a thorough scolding. You child, why didn't you consult family about such major decisions? I felt somewhat guilty. Didn't I write to you? You call that consultation? That was notification. And insisting grandmother not be told. While grandmother remained undisturbed, do you know how worried I've been? If something had happened to you, how could I face your grandmother and mother? Speaking thus, his eyes actually reddened. Managing grandmother's care while worrying about my situation. No wonder he looked so much thinner. But this matter was something we had long discussed. Though Uncle taught me business, I remained a Brown family daughter. From Karen Taylor's first attempt to seize Lisa's record from me when Father showed tacit approval, I had anticipated this day. I simply hadn't expected Karen Taylor, a mere stepmother, to dare manipulate my marriage plans. For Father to not oppose such a despicable person was unconscionable. I could only act decisively in response. Who knew that marrying Mike Anderson would also prove a mistake? A distinguished, scholarly official being repeatedly manipulated by two illiterate farm women, implicating me in such scandal. Anger aside, I had made the best of the situation. Circumstances forced my hand. I had no choice. I lowered my gaze. Even righteous explanations lose force when faced with a loved one's tears, so I accepted responsibility. 10 days later, the Anderson family sent an invitation for the Anderson family eldest son's 1-month celebration, requesting my attendance. The handwriting wasn't Mike Anderson's. Previously, he had helplessly explained to me, "My mother comes from farming background and doesn't understand elite family customs and protocols." I was kept ignorant about the child's situation. As for a 1-month celebration, that would naturally be impossible. Elite families concerned themselves not only with suitable matches. Though a master might have concubines before marrying his main wife, concubines differed from secondary wives. An Anderson-style concubine, hiding her pregnancy until giving birth on the main wife's wedding day, not only humiliated the main wife, but insulted her entire family, much less holding a 1-month celebration. Especially when Father and Karen Taylor had wanted to capitalize on the scandal to seize my Lisa's record. This led Susan Anderson to misjudge the situation, not only planning the celebration, but reportedly arranging new marriage prospects for Mike Anderson during it. Mike Anderson's compliance seemed predictable as well. Other families experiencing such events would hide them completely. This Anderson family actually wants to announce it with gongs and drums. How interesting. Uncle sneered sarcastically upon seeing me absorbed in the invitation. I earnestly agreed. Indeed, fortunately I cut my losses early with the divorce. Feeling both relieved and somewhat regretful, Uncle flicked my forehead. You still have the audacity to speak of it. Don't attend the celebration and stay away from the Anderson family and Mike Anderson in future. Understood? Uncle emphasized his warning. Naturally, I never intended to go anyway. Now I just want to spend each day talking with grandmother. I casually tossed the invitation into the fire and took my cloak, walking from the warm study into the cold wind toward grandmother's courtyard. Now her waking hours were few each day, yet I had endless words to share. Fortunately, with Lisa's record no longer plagued by troublesome people, I could spare time to care for grandmother. Sometime later, news arrived from Golden River. The Brown family had fallen into ruin, with Father leading others to block the entrance of Lisa's record's largest jewelry pavilion, demanding money. I am your proprietor's father. I gave her life and raised her. She should provide money for my support. When no one acknowledged him, he tried to steal from the shop. Blocked by clerks, he collapsed dramatically, crying for help. Finally, the manager summoned authorities. Since he is your birth father, please advise how to proceed. Reading the manager's letter, I felt like laughing. Initially insisting on disowning me, now claiming to be my birth father? With a stroke of my brush, I told the manager to handle it as he saw fit. With the disownment papers spread throughout Golden River, even in court I had nothing to fear. Later, the manager charged him with damaging merchandise, demanding high compensation. When the Brown family couldn't pay, he was imprisoned. The manager deliberately called out loudly, Previously, when Lisa's record faced trouble, the Brown family feared implication and expelled the proprietor from their genealogy. Now claiming to be her birth father, with such thick skin, why not repair the Great Wall? Crowds of spectators gathered in circles. The remaining Brown family members slunk away in shame. Later, I heard Karen Taylor sold remaining possessions and fled, but was cornered by newly released Tom Brown. In their struggle, Tom Brown fell into the river. When rescued, his body was grotesquely swollen. Karen Taylor was convicted of murdering her husband and sentenced to hanging. The great Brown family collapsed overnight, leaving people sighing with regret. 3 years later, Lisa's record grew ever larger. After grandmother's passing, I moved from Uncle's house next door, then later to the capital. Uncle said I was born for business. In the capital, where every inch of land commanded gold prices amid luxury and indulgence, I found myself increasingly nostalgic for the beauty of Jiangnan. Thus, Lisa's record shops opened progressively southward. 5 years later, Jiangnan produced a female merchant prince. Overnight, women throughout Golden River began attempting business ventures. Women previously confined to inner quarters boldly ventured forth. Some, when their businesses failed, even blamed their husbands' families for hindrance and boldly divorced their husbands. They declared boldly, "Lisa's Records proprietor once nearly lost everything, but precisely after divorcing did she rise from ashes to expand her business empire." Though seemingly following my example, they didn't understand business fundamentals. Ultimately losing everything, when they sought to return to domestic life, their former families refused them. Thus, a group of destitute women daily cursed me for destroying families and ruining their happiness. Others looked on enviously but dared not take the first step, sighing repeatedly in their chambers. Not everyone can be like Lisa's record, catching the right moment. That Lisa boss was purely lucky. Hearing this, Kate felt indignant and couldn't help angrily retorting, "A bunch of people who understand nothing. If our miss had such good luck, how could she have encountered such people?" I nodded earnestly in complete agreement. Lisa Brown's journey to this point relied not on luck, but entirely on effort. Looking back on those tumultuous years, I often wondered if I had been too harsh in my judgments, too quick to sever ties that might have been mended with patience. But then I would remember the calculating gleam in Susan Anderson's eyes, the way she had orchestrated that entire theatrical performance on my wedding night, and I knew I had made the right choice. The years that followed were not without their challenges. Building an empire from the ashes of scandal required more than just business acumen. It demanded an iron will and an unwavering belief in one's own worth. There were nights when I lay awake in my fine silk bed, surrounded by luxury I had earned through my own efforts, yet feeling utterly alone. Kate would sometimes find me at my writing desk in the early hours, reviewing accounts or planning new ventures, and she would gently remind me that even the strongest trees needed rest. "Miss, you've achieved more than most men could dream of," she would say, placing a warm cup of tea beside my inkwell. "Perhaps it's time to think about what else might bring you joy." But what was joy to someone who had been betrayed by those closest to her? What was companionship when one had learned that even family could be bought with the right price? I had found solace in numbers, in the steady growth of my enterprise, in the respect, grudging though it might be, that my success commanded. The irony was not lost on me that Mike Anderson's career had flourished in the years following our divorce. Word reached me through the intricate network of merchant gossip that he had remarried. A demure daughter of a minor official's family, someone who would cause no scandal and bear him children without complication. Part of me wondered if he ever thought of our brief time together, if he regretted the choices that had led to our separation. But such musings were indulgent and served no purpose in my carefully ordered world. It was during my 30th year that an unexpected visitor arrived at my Jiangnan estate. I had purchased the property 2 years prior, a sprawling compound with traditional architecture that reminded me of better times in my childhood. The gardens were particularly beautiful in spring when cherry blossoms created drifts of pink snow across the carefully maintained paths. I was reviewing the weekly reports from my various enterprises when Kate announced that a gentleman caller was requesting an audience. My first instinct was to decline. I had learned to be wary of unexpected visitors as they often came seeking loans or investments that would only benefit themselves. But something in Kate's expression gave me pause. He says he's a friend of your uncle's, miss. A scholar by the name of James Morrison. He's traveled quite far and speaks most respectfully of your family. James Morrison. The name was unfamiliar, yet there was something in Kate's tone that suggested this was no ordinary business proposition. I set aside my papers and instructed her to show him to the receiving hall. The man who entered was perhaps 5 years my senior, with the bearing of someone accustomed to books rather than commerce. His robes, while well made, showed the subtle signs of long travel, and his hands bore the ink stains that marked a true scholar. What struck me most, however, was his directness. Where most visitors approached with elaborate flattery and circuitous requests, he simply bowed appropriately and spoke plainly. Miss Brown, I apologize for this intrusion. Your uncle, Steve Miller, spoke of you with great admiration before his passing last month. The words hit me like a physical blow. Uncle Steve, dead? I had received no word, no message. My carefully maintained composure cracked slightly as I gestured for him to sit. I had not heard this news. Uncle Steve was... I paused, gathering myself. He was very dear to me. James Morrison's expression softened with genuine sympathy. He spoke of you as the daughter he never had. In his final days, he expressed concern about your isolation, your dedication to work at the expense of all else. He asked me to seek you out, to deliver something he hoped might remind you of possibilities beyond ledgers and profit margins. From within his travel pack, he withdrew a small wooden box, beautifully carved with intricate patterns that seemed to tell a story of their own. Inside, nestled in silk, lay a piece of jade, not valuable in monetary terms, but clearly precious for other reasons. He said this belonged to your grandmother Carol Miller, that she had intended it for you when you found someone worthy of sharing your life with. Your uncle believed, hoped, that such a person might still exist. I held the jade piece carefully, its smooth surface warming under my touch. Memories flooded back. Grandmother's gentle hands teaching me to write, her stories of a younger, more hopeful world, her quiet strength in the face of adversity. She had believed in love, in partnership, in the possibility that two people could build something greater together than either could achieve alone. Mr. Morrison, I said carefully, while I appreciate Uncle's concern and your kindness in traveling so far, I fear his hopes were misplaced. I have learned that independence serves me far better than any partnership could. He leaned back slightly, studying me with intelligent eyes that held no judgment, only curious assessment. Your uncle mentioned you might say something of that nature. He also told me about a rather remarkable network of schools you've been quietly establishing throughout the southern provinces. Schools that teach girls not only traditional arts but also mathematics and business principles. This was unexpected. I had indeed been funding educational initiatives, but quietly, through intermediaries. How had Uncle known? He was quite proud, James Morrison continued, that his teachings had inspired not just personal success, but a vision for changing how society might function. He believed such vision required not isolation, but collaboration with others who shared similar ideals. Despite my wariness, I found myself intrigued by this man's directness and his apparent knowledge of my endeavors. Over the following hour, our conversation revealed a surprising alignment of values and perspectives. James Morrison was not merely a scholar, but an educator himself, working to establish institutions that would provide learning opportunities for children regardless of their family's social standing. The traditional examination system, he explained, serves only those born into privilege, but intelligence and capability exist across all social levels. If we could create pathways for the talented, regardless of birth, imagine how our society might benefit. His passion was evident, and more importantly, his approach was practical rather than merely theoretical. He spoke of specific curricula, funding mechanisms, and methods for overcoming official resistance to educational innovation. "You mentioned my schools," I said eventually. "What exactly do you know about them?" A slight smile crossed his features. "I know they're producing remarkable graduates. Young women who can calculate compound interest as easily as they embroider, who understand contract law alongside poetry. Several have approached me seeking advanced education, and their preparation has been exemplary." I felt a warmth of pride that I rarely allowed myself to experience. The schools had been my secret project, funded through careful skimming of profits and managed through trusted intermediaries. To learn they were succeeding, creating actual opportunities for girls who might otherwise remain trapped in traditional limitations, was deeply satisfying. "Perhaps," James Morrison continued, "we might discuss how such initiatives could be expanded. Your practical experience combined with my educational background might prove mutually beneficial." There was something in his phrasing, his careful choice of words, that reminded me of business negotiations. But unlike those transactions, which were typically predatory in nature, this felt more like an invitation to partnership. True partnership, where both parties contributed strength to achieve something neither could accomplish alone. Over the weeks that followed, James Morrison remained in the area, ostensibly researching local educational needs, but frequently finding reasons to visit my estate. Our conversations ranged across subjects I hadn't discussed in years: philosophy, literature, the theoretical underpinnings of social reform. I found myself looking forward to his visits in ways that had nothing to do with business advantage. Kate observed these developments with poorly concealed satisfaction. "It's good to see you engaging with ideas beyond profit margins, miss," she commented one morning while arranging fresh flowers in the receiving hall. "That gentleman speaks with great respect for your mind as well as your achievements." "Kate," I warned, "don't develop romantic notions. This is purely intellectual discourse." Her knowing smile suggested she found my protests unconvincing. The truth was more complex than I cared to admit. James Morrison's presence had awakened aspects of myself that I had thought permanently buried beneath years of careful self-protection. When he asked about my reading habits, I found myself sharing books that had shaped my thinking. When he inquired about my long-term goals beyond mere business expansion, I articulated dreams I had never spoken aloud. Visions of a society where women could pursue education and commerce without social condemnation, where marriages could be partnerships of equals rather than economic arrangements. "Your grandmother would be proud," he said one afternoon as we walked through my gardens. "Uncle Steve mentioned she was quite remarkable in her own right." "She was," I agreed, touching the jade pendant I now wore. "She believed in possibilities that her generation couldn't achieve but hoped the next might." "And you're creating those possibilities," he observed, "not just for yourself, but for others." His understanding of my deeper motivations was unsettling in its accuracy. Most people saw only the surface success, the wealth, the business empire, the independence that defied conventional expectations. But James Morrison perceived the underlying desire to transform society itself, to create options for future generations that had been denied to mine. As autumn painted the landscape in brilliant colors, our relationship deepened in ways I had never expected to experience. He proposed not marriage in the traditional sense, but a true partnership, legal and emotional bonds that would allow us to pursue shared goals while maintaining individual autonomy. "I'm not seeking a conventional wife," he explained during one of our lengthy conversations. "I want a partner whose mind challenges my own, whose vision expands what either of us might accomplish separately." The proposal terrified me precisely because it offered what I had always claimed to want: respect, equality, shared purpose. All the things my brief marriage to Mike Anderson had conspicuously lacked. Yet accepting meant risking the independence I had fought so hard to achieve. That night, I sat alone in my study, grandmother's jade in my hands, contemplating a future I had never dared imagine possible. Through my window, I could see lights from the village below, each representing a family, a set of dreams and struggles not unlike my own journey. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to consider that perhaps true strength lay not in absolute independence, but in choosing the right person to trust with one's vulnerabilities. When morning came, I had my answer.